The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, legal, or other professional advice. All opinions expressed by the host or guest are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of QP Consulting LLC or its affiliates. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. Listeners should consult their financial advisor or other professionals before making any investment decisions. QP Consulting LLC is a registered investment advisor. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. For more information, including our disclosures and Form ADV, please visit qp-consulting.com. Hello and welcome to The Jagged Path with Mark Ivsevich, where we talk about people, careers, the U.S. retirement system, and the many indirect ways people move through their working years towards retirement. Today we have Hank Groberg. Hank is a 2022 graduate of UT Austin. He graduated with a communications major and currently works at Blue Duck Media. Welcome to the show, Hank, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
I get all that right?
You nailed it. Yeah, you did good. Texas to Blue Duck.
So I always do a little research before I start these things, and I got to ask, what does the following mean? So on your resume, on your website, it says you built a hot dog tracker to feed live stats to broadcast talent during the Chestnut versus Kobayashi contest and logged 24 hours of archival footage to create the world's first hot dog eating statistical database. Tell me more. That's fascinating.
I'll say to start, a lot of stuff you see on resumes is inflated or is,
embellished.
Embellished. Yeah, that actually is all true. Every word of that is fact. I graduated with a film degree in the communication school from Texas, and I took a job working in sports media. And as part of that, I was contracted out to Netflix to work on this. It was a hot dog eating grudge match between like Joey Chestnut and Kobayashi, who are the two goats, the glizzy goats, as we call them. And they had, quote, unfinished beef because they hadn't competed against each other head-to-head since 2009. And so Netflix brought a whole crew to Vegas and made a big deal out of it. And I was brought in just as a researcher. And I got there and I was like, what do you want me to research? And they were kind of like, I guess, hot dogs. And it was a fun team to work on because they had people who came from reality and people who came from news and only a couple people who came from sports. So people were bringing their own perspectives on it. Being a sports person, I was like, we're going to do sports statistics. So I watched every hot dog eating contest that either of them had competed in. And then I compiled their minute by minute breakdowns, their dogs per second, dogs per minute, seconds per dog. Yeah.
Almost like a shot chart for hot dog eaters type of thing.
Exactly.
Did you figure out any sort of side hustle, any way to monetize the hot dog database?
No monetization, but there was a researcher, I think from Elon University, who was studying like stomach capacity, and one of our producers had talked to them in the past about some it was to learn more about the way competitive eaters train, and so I sent them my numbers afterwards and was like, if you want to cite me in any scholarly articles, it's Groberg, like feel free.
Fantastic. So you could be a guest speaker down at Elon maybe at some point.
Guest eater, maybe. Yeah,
guest eater.
Speaker, yeah.
So tell me about, so I'm a neophyte as a podcaster. What makes a good podcast? And it seems like more and more podcasts, people are doing video. I myself don't really care to watch the people I'm listening to. What's your take? What are kind of the main tips?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you. I listen to podcasts all the time. I don't watch that often, but I do think like podcast is the word we're stuck with, but it's becoming a more of a video medium. What makes a good one? If you want to hang out with the people on it, that always seems like a good rule of thumb. Most of what I do is sports, and so I'll listen to it, sped up just to try to download information because I can't watch every game I want to watch. So it's a way to learn what happens. But there are definitely other ones where it's like I want to hear the banter, and I don't mind when my football talk guys get sidetracked on animals with military honors, for example. It's something I know a lot about because the random podcast I got into it. So I think it's a two-sided coin of being consistent, making sure your listeners know what they're getting into, but then also being flexible and being willing to go down a tangent. As long as you're being engaging and funny and bringing the listener with you, I think it's good content.
Gotcha. Perfect. No, that helps. All right. So before I get into money questions and money things, I like to, for the audience, just in that vein, to get to understand people a little more. You obviously mentioned you're a big sports fan. I've listened to the King McClure podcast. Am I saying that right?
You are, yeah.
Okay. And so rate your favorite teams in order from your most favorite to least between the Wizards, Commanders, Texas football, Texas basketball, the Caps, and the Nats.
That's tough.
Yep.
That's tough. I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'm going to say Texas basketball is at the bottom. And the reason is because I grew up in Maryland, right outside D.C., which is, you can probably guess from the other teams. And so I went to a lot of Terps hoops games when I was little.
Okay.
Like, my dad would take me. And then also Georgetown hoops fan as well, because my aunt works there. So Texas basketball is a little, like, diluted.
Okay.
At the bottom, next up, I would say the Nats probably. Just, like, I don't know. How big of a baseball fan are you now?
I'm fair weather. You know, I mean, after the World Series and then they kind of tanked. So if they were back up to trying, I would care a little bit more. But, you know, baseball for me is something that I like going to and having a hot dog and some peanuts. But I'm not going to sit back and watch regular season baseball unless a family member's playing.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. It's a nice pastime, but it's not like a sport I get really passionate about. But then after that, it gets tough because I do get very passionate about these. I would have to say next is probably the Capitals, although I love the Caps. But the reason is just because I only follow the Caps. I don't really follow other hockey teams or what's going on with like the general. I know the big players, and I caught some of the Avalanche Wild game last night, but like I'm not tuning in to games every week. I'll check in on the playoffs, and I'll watch most Caps games, but outside of that, I don't really follow the sport.
Okay, so you're down to your big three of Wiz, Commanders, and UT football.
And this is when it gets really tough. This is when I've been stalling to get to these three. I guess I'm gonna put the Commanders third for the sole reason that they were so miserable to root for up until like 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I still can't wear shirts with the old team name in public. So like it's difficult to fully embrace them.
Okay.
And then I think in honor of recent events, I got to put Texas football number 2, and then the Wizards, the owners of the number 1 pick, number 1 overall.
That is amazing. That is amazing that the Wizards would be number 1. I mean, I get the eternal optimism. I get the number 1 pick as a Pacers fan. It crushed me what happened the other night. But
oh, yeah, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you know what? I was happy to see the Wizards. If any team should get a little bit of good luck, and at least they seem to be doing things moderately the right way, that's impressive, though, that the Wizards are your number 1. I wouldn't have picked that out.
I mean, Mark, you know I love basketball. Like, you first met me probably as like a teenager trash talking you on the basketball court when you were clearly the best player out there. Like I was like elbow height, and you were like, "Why is this guy running his mouth?"
All very true. I'm looking forward to the tournament here in another month too. So fill me in on this. What did you want to do after college, and are you doing
it? Yes, I'm gonna say yes. I am doing what I wanted to do. However, what I wanted to do, I think my goals were not like career based. What I wanted to do was like. I met my girlfriend in college. I wanted to keep dating her. That was a big one. Still going strong. That was cool. I haven't messed that up yet. I enjoyed athletic activities, pastimes. Like I live in Los Angeles now. I've been playing a ton of beach volleyball. Still play like pickup hoops. Joined a flag football league.
Oh, nice.
And then I travel a ton. I get to go camping. So like all of those things. I've gotten to do. In terms of career, when I got to college, I originally wanted to do documentary film or like SNL style, like sketch comedy writing. My secret dream was like a mockumentary. I thought was a really fun way to like satire and capture the world. I was in college when the pandemic hit, and as a film student, there was no way for me to like practice my skills because all film sets were shut down. But there was a podcast company that was hiring interns. And so I ended up falling into that. And then like I said, we started as a podcast, but now all podcasts are video. We do a lot of video production. I worked remote for them in Austin for a while and eventually like moved out to LA so I could work for them in person. And then they've also been good about letting me go freelance, like take a month or two at a time and experience other jobs in that world. So like got to try a lot of stuff, which is fun. Learned a lot of skills. I get to work in sports, which is something I love. So yeah, this wasn't necessarily what I set out to do, but I think I've hit a spot where I'm very happy.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned like, we think of COVID and all the bad things, but like that's certainly expedited podcasts. I mean, there's so many podcasts that became super popular during that
Yeah.
because everyone was trying to, get through the day
Yeah.
in different ways.
That's why
What about?
come on, hantavirus. That's what we're rooting for over here.
Oh, and please no. Now, what about during college? Did you, in terms of extracurriculars, did you work while you were a student, or did you not have the additional income kind of coming in? What did your college experience look like at UT?
Yeah. So at Texas, there's a way you can get in-state tuition as an out-of-stater, which is like one way to do it is to form a business and then pay taxes on your business. So I, as a freshman, started a tutoring company. I tutored in high school. And at the beginning, it was just me reaching out to parents through listservs and like people my parents knew who had kids who were in high school and doing the tutoring on my own. And then eventually I got enough clients that I was able to like hire other college students to work for me and pay them as like contractors. And so I ran a tutoring company for all 4 years of college, which was like, it wasn't necessarily profitable, but just by having it and paying taxes and staying in the black, I was able to get a huge discount on tuition, which was great. And then I also worked at a restaurant, which was like, it's called Dirty Martin's Comeback Place. It was a greasy burger bar, and it was like up until 2016, the cooks didn't wear gloves, and then eventually someone walked in and was like, "What are you guys doing?" But that
So
was
you're not recommending it to Austin
no. I'm
visitors.
totally recommending it. It's awesome. I mean, they turned 100 years old this year. They just do it. They're old school. They're not dirty. They're old school. It was called
Okay.
Dirty Martin's because they had dirt floors way back when.
I got it.
Great.
I got
Definitely,
it.
you're gonna want to nap after you eat there, Mark, for sure. But like, but it's really good. Good food.
Well, that sounds like I'm interested. I do remember your dad talking about kind of the plan for in-state tuition and everything, and I think that takes some initiative to kind of go through doing that, especially with the college costs and kind of what's happening, and you being very close to your in-state university, your flagship. So to be able to go to Austin and experience something new, that's really cool. All right, so tell me this. So this is more of the money stuff. So you kind of toggle over that generation between cash and tap and swipe, and so the tap and swipe where it's I always compare it to poker chips, where it's not like you're having to put down $100 bill for that dinner. You're tapping your phone and moving along. Do you use any budgeting apps or any financial apps to kind of track where money comes and goes and how it works into a budget for you? To me, this is if you've found something that's helpful, go for it.
Right. So I use Rocket Money, which has been a good thing for me. I found it about a year ago.
Okay.
It's good because I just link it to my credit card and my debit card, and it automatically categorizes expenses. So I'll get, I can check and be like, wow, 40% of my total spending this month was on dining out. Like I should probably do less of that.
Right.
I'm not like, it's kind of like it's there when I want it. So I'll maybe go a couple months at a time without checking it. But it is also like, honestly, the most often reason I'll use it is if I check my bank account and it's either higher or lower than I'm expecting, I'll go to Rocket Money to figure out why. And it's been good for like a good like resource to find answers to questions when I have them. But yeah, I do get what you're saying about the poker chips, where you can I can just tap my card for everything and never have to think about how much I'm actually spending for
Now, is Rocket Money, one of the things I've seen with a lot of apps is if it's a free app, then you're kind of you're the product, right? So they're tracking spending. Do you get a lot of solicitations and things from that, or not so much?
I get a lot of emails from them. I will say
Okay.
I have a filter, so I don't have to look at them all, but I do. Sometimes they're very helpful because it'll be like, hey, unusual spending detected, and often it's like, I just bought myself whatever it was, and so I know what it is when it pops up.
Okay.
Or other times though, it'll be like, it'll flag like a subscription I didn't know I had. Like I left my Hulu going for a couple months after I stopped using Hulu, and I was like,
Gotcha.
Hulu, you can still sponsor us, so I will start using Hulu again if you want to pay me to. But like I Rocket Money was like, hey, you're paying $13 a month. Like, what is this? And I was able to look and be like, oh, I shouldn't be doing that, and that was helpful. That's the sort of thing that I would miss without that.
And then what about, so at your employer, and this is where I'll do a little education on this too, but I have a question, which is, and you don't have to answer this one because this is really if you're comfortable or even a range. What was your starting salary right out of school starting at Blue Duck? Is there a range in there? And if you don't want to share that, that's fine as well.
I'll share it. I think they started me. So when I started there, I was an intern, and so I was making $20 an hour,
Okay.
and I was working 2 days a week. That was during my junior year into the summer after is when I was working there, and then during my senior year, I worked I think 3 or 4 days a week, and they gave me like a small weekly salary that I probably totaled to like under 50K a year. And then
Okay.
once they hired me full time, I hit like 55 a year. I think was my starting salary, and they've
Okay.
since given me raises, but I'm 4 years out of college now, and I haven't progressed that much past that.
Got it. Okay. And you're so this is a question, and I know some of the background on this, and just looking at this is publicly available information, although a lot of people don't think it is. So Blue Duck has a 401k. They started it in 2024. If Tasha ever listens to this, she signs the tax filings. Is that something you've chosen to participate in at Blue Duck or no?
It is, yes, and Tasha is probably 8 feet to my right now, so
Oh,
I'll
fantastic.
get her to listen to this for sure.
Oh, that's too funny. And do you, when in putting in money to that, do you do it do you have a Roth option? Are you putting it on an after-tax basis or on a before-tax basis, or do you not know?
So this is when we start to hit my questions for you.
Okay.
I have a Roth, but I had it before Blue Duck. When I started with Blue Duck, they didn't offer a 401k. And the background for newer listeners is that this company was founded in 2017 as a pretty small production company, and our full-time team is still like 15 people or less. So it's not a huge operation. So they added the 401k, I think like you said, 24, and they don't match yet either. So I signed
Gotcha.
up through Voya to participate in it, but there was a lot of like automatable options, and I kind of clicked like I chose what my monthly contribution was, which I think I did
Okay.
4 or 5%. They were like, how aggressive do you want us to be in investing on your behalf? And I think I hit moderate, and then haven't thought about it since.
Okay. So here's what's going on there. So
Cool.
in 2019, Cal Savers, which is, since you're in California, and a lot of states, so our clients are primarily in the DMV and in Indiana. And the DMV, both Maryland and Virginia, have these state-based auto IRA plans. So what happened for Blue Duck is that they had to offer a plan. So you could have offered the state-based plan in California called Cal Savers, which was one of the early ones. And there's reasons why an employer might not want to do that. So for Blue Duck, I think it makes sense. You have just enough people to be able to offer one. The other thing I'd say is this is the first .com bust back in late 1999. I worked for a tech startup, and it's not remotely uncommon that firms don't offer matching when they're in a very competitive field. They have plenty of candidates. They don't need additional incentives to kind of have a talent pool that's going to come to them. So that's kind of what I see within the plan happening. I could tell all that the company didn't match and all that from this 5500 filing. And for the listeners too, what I would say is the question of, do you do money via Roth or pre-tax? So one of the things, like if you Googled Roth, all the rules that show up are related to the IRA, not the Roth 401k. And they're very different rules with different limits, much higher limits in the 401k world. But I see people conflate those two all the time. And the difference is, do you pay money? You pay taxes now. It grows tax deferred. And then when you retire, way down at the end of the rainbow, you take it out tax free. That's the Roth piece. The pre-tax piece is, let's say you put in 5%, and this is perfect because I can do the math on 50,000, $2,500 a year. You're being taxed as if you didn't earn that $2,500 this year when you put the money in.
Yeah.
So it goes in tax-free, grows tax deferred, but then in retirement, when you start taking it out, that's when you're going to owe taxes.
Yeah.
So it's pay now or pay later. For someone like yourself, your peak earning years are well ahead of you. You probably should do the Roth. Just stereotypically. You mentioned you're not married yet. All of these things are really facts and circumstances. So it's also not something where you like talk to your buddies and they're like, what are you doing? Because if they are in a different state, different income taxes, married, single, all that stuff kind of factors into this. Was that what you were kind of leaning towards asking? Like, what do people in your position do in this case?
Yeah, and then also I guess I think I understand the benefits of putting money away so that I can get it later without having to pay taxes on it. But I know there's different there's just different people you can trust money. Like I didn't know there was a Roth IRA and a Roth 401k. I thought the Roth was only the one thing. So I guess what are the other 401k options besides Roth?
Yeah, so I mean, there's really just either pre-tax, which is traditional, and that's the way it started when I started doing this. The idea was always, the concept of the 401k was that you're going to earn more in your working years than in retirement. And what I've experienced working with people on the wealth management side is that's not always the case. So that's kind of scenario one. Scenario two would be, well, what if tax rates go up in the future? So I think it was, this is getting way too inside the beltway stuff, but like I think our deficit was like going to come in right around $2 trillion this year. So the point is we don't pay for the stuff today. Yeah, awesome. We're not paying for everything today anyways. So at some point you would assume either rates move up or deductions move down so that kind of the effective tax rate goes higher. And if that happened, the Roth would make sense to like have some money in there today that you're not going to be taxed on. Point is, you don't really know, especially at your age, what's it going to look like in 40, 50 years when you retire. So you're probably going to have a mix of the two. And my point is, I would put it in Roth now, and then when your income changes and starts to move up, you reevaluate. And if Blue Duck ever does decide to match, they don't have to, but typically that's always going to be pre-tax money in the match piece, just because they get a tax benefit for doing that as well. So, it's something that I think for a lot of people, like if you're defaulted into a plan or if you're encouraged to go in, it's kind of the second question, which is, okay, you wanted to get in, then how much do you think you can afford? And then the third question people sometimes look at is, okay, should I do it pre-tax or Roth?
Yeah.
And then where should the investments go?
Yeah.
The investments piece is probably the least important, and it's the piece people want to talk about first. So the savings rate's really kind of the key thing. And I think what you're doing makes a lot of sense and is good. Like you just want to get started.
Yeah.
Because you've got so much time. And then let's say a year from now, if you get a merit-based raise and you're making a little bit more money, you figure, hey, I could probably budget for another 1%. And if you're doing it in percentages, it just kind of all keeps ramping up. Because over time, you probably want to be at about 10 to 15% of your pay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but the earlier you start, like you did, the better off you're going to be long term. So we'll see a lot of people, especially with going back to your tutoring business you started. If you were taking out a bunch of loans to pay for college and you're focused on paying that down right now, that prevents a lot of people from saving in these plans at the outset. So you might have someone who doesn't start until their late 30s or early 40s, and that's where they have to put in a whole heck of a lot more money into these plans to get caught up.
So would you say it's better to just be putting out, even if it's only a small amount, to just be putting it in now and starting earlier as just doing what I can?
Typically, yeah. So I always kind of go through a laundry list of questions, which is like, one, do you have credit card debt? If people say yes, my focus is on them getting that paid off first, and then start building a budgeting strategy for how do you bring in more than you spend, and then kind of move from there. So that's kind of the cornerstone. Then number two would be having some emergency reserves. So you're in a very walkable town. You're in Hermosa or Manhattan?
Hermosa Beach, yeah.
Okay, so awesome area, super easy to get around. But let's say you've got a car, or if you owned a place and you're worried about what happens if my refrigerator breaks or what if happens something to my car, you want to have some emergency reserves for covering those expenses without having to dip into like a credit card.
Yeah.
Then beyond that, that's when we start talking about the retirement savings piece. And so to me, it's frequently you'll hear the recommendation of at least put in up to your company match. But what I like that you've done is your company didn't have a match and you still participated. It forces two things. One is you've got some money going in, but also you're living off of less than 100% of your paycheck today. So that forced savings is why the 401k and the employer-based plan system is so popular, is people, that's out before that money hits your bank account. So it's for a lot of people, it's kind of forced discipline if they can just get going and leave it alone and turn a blind eye to it.
So what about, I've done some contract work for NBC, which is a much bigger company. And I've done the last like 3 Olympics for them. So it's like a month or so at a time. And they have a mandatory 401k that I had to sign up for the first time I did it through Fidelity, I believe. So I have now, 3 months worth of salary from NBC's like sitting in a 401k somewhere that I have just once again, not really looked at all.
So what I would say is two things. A big company like that, CBS Sports, my sister-in-law works for them, same thing. They have what's called an auto enrollment plan. So you're automatically put it into it. You're allowed to opt out of that if you didn't want to do that.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought that was mandatory.
Yeah, no, it's not mandatory. But it's a good thing they got, some money in there. What I would say is if you're not an existing employee and you're not going to be working any future Olympics, if enough time passes and your balance is small enough, they can force you out of that plan.
Yeah.
So if your balance is under $7,000, they can move you out. If it's above $7,000, it stays in the plan. So that would be the one thing that I would monitor. And depending on where you're at, it could be a reason to consolidate what you have into the Blue Duck plan, or you could set up an individual retirement account and roll that money out just so that it doesn't get pushed to one of these auto IRA providers. It's not the sexiest thing to talk about. There's reasons operationally that they allow that to happen so that it kind of eases some burden on the employers. But for you, the saver, I would focus on that a little bit. During those contract months, it's probably less than that 7,000, I'm assuming.
I really couldn't tell you.
So, all right, let me ask you this, because I some of this isn't the most engaging stuff, but I think for a new saver, this is all very helpful. Like the decisions you've gone through, and you've kind of said, hey, I don't really know why, but I got in the plan. I don't really know what I'm invested in, but I'm in it. And so like that's kind of the key. And then depending on like Voya, you mentioned, that's the record keeper. And Voya has some software. Someone like yourself should be very aggressive because once again, you're not going to touch this for 40 years. It's going to go up a lot. It's going to go down a lot, but 3 out of every 4 years on average, things are going to go up. And if you can just have the discipline of when you move from one job to the next to continually invest and continually save, it's kind of real basic and boring. It's simple blocking and tackling to success. But people can't do it because every time they see a big dip, of which your generation has not experienced yet, being perfectly candid. But, for people that have lived through like a COVID pullback, you feel like you've lost money at some point?
Spoken like someone who never bought an NFT. Like the not that I luckily avoided the crypto whatever like craze, but I know plenty of people who have felt the weight of bad investments already.
Well, and I would say the bad investments, like the boring stuff works, but it's not fun to talk about or brag about. And it's like I feel like the gambling thing right now. You're if you go down to a Wizards game, there's a sports book in the arena.
Yeah.
And if you talk to any of your friends who gamble, my friends, I'm being candid, none of them really make money. But if they have fun doing it and they break even, it's great.
Yeah.
But I think on the investing front, that's the other thing too. There's a lot of bright, shiny objects out there that there'll always be someone trying to sell you stuff. And it's kind of finding the people you trust or can rely on to kind of go through, okay, here's the noise out there, what truly kind of works in all different cycles, and what are the risks I can diversify away from, and what is the stuff I can't diversify away from, I just have to stomach. So that's kind of the tough thing for people.
So that's part of, honestly, like one of the biggest barriers of entry to like the stock market or investing as a whole is just like how many options there are, or how many options there seem to be, and how daunting the step of like, all right, am I really going to sit down and commit myself to like learning this language and understanding the landscape? And like me, like I think I'm pretty cautious when it comes to spending, especially spending large amounts. And so I don't want to put significant amounts of money into something that I don't truly understand. And I don't truly understand the stock market, or even, like my 401k is like the biggest risk I've taken. And apparently I should have been being more aggressive with it. So do you have like a general, I don't know, like a survival guide for first putting your money into anything past the very basics, or is it just like, is it going to be a case by case basis?
Well, no, I mean, I think when you're the most basic thing is when you're younger, you've got time on your side. And also what seems like a ton of money today in terms of what you'll need to compile to fund your retirement, it's not that big. So if let's say you've put in $2,500, if you lose 20% of that, if you saw a drawback, you'd be like, wow, I'm down $500. This isn't working. And that's one of the things that it's all counterintuitive, when in fact you should look at that and be like, oh, those companies that prior to that 20% pullback, with each paycheck I had money going into companies whose services you use, companies whose services are on your phone, that you're paying subscription fees to and everything else. And the reason why the market's been so resilient is that those companies keep earning and more money, and the earnings that they have keep beating estimates. And there will be a period where that changes. But when people are the most fearful of investing is kind of also sometimes the most opportune time to invest. And the nice thing the 401k does is it kind of takes that off your plate where you don't have to overthink it. You're going to put money in good times. You're going to put money in bad times. Your account's going to go up. It's going to go down. But you're buying, if you believe in free markets and if you believe in, kind of what has made the companies successful, but also if we think about companies that were successful 20 years ago are not necessarily the same companies that are successful today. So if we think of like an NVIDIA that people now, everyone knows who they are, people weren't talking about them a decade ago. So that level of innovation is the thing that makes the U.S. economy very resilient, but also globally, there's a lot of great companies globally. There's a lot of earnings power out there and have the ability to innovate. And I think it's that innovation that happens that's really the reason why you put your money at risk and expect a greater return, but once again, over a longer period of time. So it's not as if there's a silver bullet that I could say, hey, you should do this. But as a younger investor, at least on the retirement stuff, if we're talking money that you've got a super long timeline, 90+% of that money should be in the stock market in a diversified manner. Big companies, small, international, emerging. And at Voya, you can probably do that through a fund with a year after it, or a risk-based model. But that's kind of the easy piece. It's much harder when you're trying to invest for a shorter time horizon, like for college savings in a 529, or if you guys eventually settle in Austin and you want to buy a house and you're trying to accumulate money for that over a shorter window of time. Those are kind of the more difficult challenges because you can't take on the amount of volatility that, in theory, you should take on now, despite your kind of natural inclination to want to avoid that risk.
Got it. So the theory is kind of like market optimism. It's like you understand that volatility is going to come, but also you have to just trust that the arrow will be pointed up, in the long term.
In the long term, correct. You could lose money if you think about it. So I started in 97. That's when I graduated school. And from 2000 to 2010, the U.S. stock market, if you were just invested in big U.S. companies, you lost money for 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's the reality. But if you were globally diversified and you invest in small companies, like you were fine. And, coming out of the global financial crisis from 2010 to 2020, people were freaked out, and reasonably so. But that was a very opportune time to be invested in that prior decade.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the belief in the system we have in place that has been so successful for such a long period of time. And then as you start to get older, that's when you're not in those accumulation phase of life, but you're getting closer to maybe starting to use that money. That's when you start to take your foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah. When you don't need to take as many risks. That makes sense.
That's right. Well, I know time-wise, I'd asked for kind of a commitment. We're getting a little close to that. Any other questions you had for me before I wanted to kind of finish with some lyrics? And you gave me a couple of musicians I can utilize, so I'll kind of go through my why there. But any other thoughts or questions you had for me?
I'm sure that tonight when I go and log into my Voya and my Fidelity, I will think of more specific questions. But at the moment, no, there's nothing coming to mind. Hope you don't mind some frantic text from me at the early hours of the morning.
I'd be happy to receive them and run through any questions you have. So I mentioned I always finish with some lyrics, and lyrics, I feel like music lyrics, it's pretty simple because they're always about love or money, or there's plenty of financial lyrics. And so I asked you for favorite artists, and actually some of ours overlap. You mentioned the Police. That was my first concert. I went to the Synchronicity tour back in 1983. I think I was 8.
Man,
and I was the younger brother that got dragged along, but it was, and we all loved the Police in my family. But I wasn't going to pull any lyrics from there. I decided to take a series of one-liners from one of your other favorite artists, a bit closer to your generation than mine. And those are the lyrics of Mac Miller. So Mac Miller died in 2018, I believe, at the very young age of 26.
That was a tough day, a really tough day in my freshman dorm.
So it's interesting, my kids are listening to more and more music that sometimes overlaps with my interest. And so here are 4 songs, and I think in the spirit of current inflation, you mentioned with gas prices and filling up your tank of gas, I wonder how well Mac Miller's lyrics are going to translate in 10, 20 years. So his song 100 Grandkids said, "Back then I had a dream. I got this money, man. I know my life would change. Just need 100 grand." Okay, so that's for the 100 grandkids. Then on When the Money Coming Slow, his lyric was, "Never start a day with empty pockets because I seek profit, keeping work like an office." I don't think there's anything we can really glean from that. On Rush Hour, he said, "I'm just trying to grow up old and rich." So once again, with your 401k, continually investing, avoiding the noise, continually putting money in. And then on $1 million, he said, "Or I can grab a 1 with 6 zeros. What would I do with $1 million?" So now inflation's kicked in for Mac. He's up to $1 million versus the 100 grand. And on Perfect Circle Godspeed, me and the homies would be sitting on millions, reminiscing on times when we were so broke. So Mac talks about 100 grand, then up to $1 million. And I'm thinking that those numbers aren't going to translate very well for your generation, because the amount you guys have to save when you factor in inflation over time, that's really what this is all about too, is giving yourself a rate of return that is going to grow net of inflation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Mac wasn't thinking about that when he wrote those lyrics. And I obviously had to crop the lyrics because, the appropriateness level of Mac Miller's lyrics aren't going to necessarily allow me to cover a full song.
And the saddest thing about that is that last one, Perfect Circle, was released posthumously. He wrote that when he was alive, but he never actually got to hit that point where he was looking back with his homies, reminiscing over his millions.
Yeah, so I'd say first I want to thank you, Hank, for coming on the show. I think despite you, kind of being nervous about coming on and saying I know very little about money, I think what's true is a lot of people don't want to ask those questions or don't want to kind of discuss what they should or shouldn't be doing. But for something, too, that's not inherent in anything you would have learned at UT Austin. So if, whether it was a high school degree, a college degree, a grad degree, at least in my experience, I didn't learn any of this in college. So it is something I think for people, they have to get out of that comfort zone of being afraid to ask the dumb questions and kind of get out there and say, okay, here's what should I be doing? And then obviously relying on people that you trust. But, budgeting, doing the boring stuff, putting money in over a long period of time, that's kind of that jagged path, because you'll have ups and downs. Maybe you'll start a business and you won't be able to save for a period of years. Maybe you'll have other financial commitments in time. But that's kind of the reason for the podcast, and that jagged path that people weave, and it's different for everybody else. So I wish you the best of luck over future generations of saving. Thanks for coming on, and I look forward to seeing you on the court in about a month.
Yeah, appreciate it, and I will see you soon. Go Wizards.
Thanks, Hank. Yeah, good luck, Wizards.